Hi, hi.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Heather Kreider, and I'm here with Amanda, our wonderful and knowledgeable educator for hemp-filled botanicals and hemp-filled apothecary. And welcome, Amanda.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here. It's a new week. I'm real big on the exhales this week. So
Yes.
happy to be here and see everyone. I hope that everyone gets as much out of this today as I want to deliver because terpenes, we're going to talk about terpenes, and that is my absolute favorite thing to
Mine
talk about.
Mine too. And I think that's how we connected. I remember when we spoke on one of our panels, I think it was it in Miami or
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
and I
yep.
remember meeting before and us chit-chatting and I'm like, I love terpenes, like, and you were like, me too, it's my favorite. And I was
Yeah,
just like, all right,
that's where it's at. That's
yeah,
where it's at. So I'm
that's
such a I'm such a plant geek anyway, and working with herbs so much, and I also love to cook. That the terpenes are just everything. So to if you want to dive right into this,
yeah, you
so
might
the
actually
terpene.
really quickly, Amanda, just let everybody know in case we have any new viewers who you
Okay,
are and what
okay,
and
okay.
just real
So my name is Amanda Hughes. Um, I met Heather about a year and a half ago ish through some CBD conferences, and we were on a panel together a few times in different states. And we just really hit it off because we both have such a passion for this plant. I'm a cannabis educator, and I'm also a licensed esthetician, and I teach cosmetic chemistry, and I am an evolving herbalist. So lots of plant things and chemistry things going through my brain too much at one time sometimes. But I really, my passion is also in advocacy. I am in Texas, and it's everything that you think it is as far as our very limited access to this plant. So a big part of what I do is activism and trying to change that. So I'm here today to talk about terpenes. I'm really
yeah,
excited.
sounds good.
So I'm hoping that although we'll just barely sort of touch on what a terpene is today and some of the most popular terpenes, I am hoping, or maybe the most abundant terpenes, I'm hoping that everyone can come back in a couple weeks and we can talk about hemp, certain terpenes for certain conditions. So,
Yes. Yes. So we have plans in the upcoming weeks. Next week, we will be going over terpenes that are great for individuals who suffer from anxiety, any type of anxiety condition. So we're super excited about that. And then we'll go do some deep dives into other terpenes that are good for other conditions as well. So
awesome.
definitely make sure everybody checks back with us in 2 weeks. So
Perfect.
yeah, we can get started.
Okay, so what's a terpene? A terpene is this aromatic molecule that, yes, it comes from cannabis. It lives in those trichomes where you find your cannabinoids, but it's what gives the plant its very specific and very particular smell. But it also does that for other plants. Terpenes are not only found in cannabis; they're found in any plant that has a scent. However, there are over 200 terpenoids found in the cannabis plant. So cannabis has by far the most number of terpenes and variety, and that's because we have ever evolving and changing and multiplying cultivars. There's just so many strains, and the terpenes are primarily there for the plant. They're there so that the plant has protection from whatever it needs protection for. Perhaps that's for pest or environmental risks. That's why the terpene content in a plant can change without intention. A grower may not be intending to change the terpene content, but depending on the growing environment, that plant might change it on its own, in spite of genetics. Um, terpenes work. Terpenes have a scent, obviously, as I just said. Cannabinoids don't have a scent. So when you have a hemp flower versus a marijuana flower, and we define those, legally, we define those federally as 0.3% or higher of THC. They smell the same. They look the same. They can have the same variety and content of cannabinoids. They cannot be. You cannot determine what is hemp and what is marijuana based off of smell because they both have cannabinoids. So that kind of may help people understand why there's a lot of legal confusion around the two plants. So terpenes work for us. They offer an enhanced sort of nuanced effect to what the plant can give you from cannabinoids. So if I have two plants that are identical in cannabinoid ratios, like let's say they have the identical amount of THC and CBD, et cetera, you may not get the same effect. They may not have the same scent. They may not, you may not enjoy them equally just because the cannabinoids are the same. And that lies in the terpene content and the sort of combination of terpenes, which is like, it's almost like thinking of if you were cooking with something and you added a pinch of 4 different things, and the next day you decided to substitute one of those things for something else. You've got a whole new recipe, if you will. Terpenes are a lipophilic compound, meaning they're fat loving. They are able to cross your blood-brain barrier. So cannabinoids, we know, cross your blood-brain barrier, obviously, because they affect you neurologically. But terpenes are actually smaller compounds than cannabinoids. So terpenes cross that blood-brain barrier easier, more readily. So think of like the effect that you can get just by smelling something, not necessarily cannabis, but a rose or lavender or peppermint or gasoline or dirt or your wet dog or so those have an emotional response or and sometimes even a physical response, and that is because those molecules, especially the natural ones coming from plants and not necessarily your dog, those have an ability to cross the blood-brain barrier just from the olfactory sense, olfactory location in your brain. There are many ways that we can sort of define and categorize terpenes. There's really not one right way or wrong way, but I do like this first chart. So if you start sort of in the middle of this wheel, and it's only 4 categories in this particular one, right? Sweet, sour, spicy, bitter. Everyone knows sweet, sour, spicy, bitter as flavors, but also as a scent, right? So if something smells flowery, you could define it as sweet very often, like a rose or a lily. And then over to the sour side, an example would be like yogurt or even a lemon. So that could be categorized as sour. Bitter, well, bitter can encompass a lot of things, and some of them we may consider less desirable than others. But salty, sort of minerally, rocky, earthy, nutty, like a raw almond, tastes a little bitter, and then certain sort of pungent plants like green tea and garlic. So spicy, that's kind of a obvious one. That's where you're going to find all of your peppers and your mints and chilies and things like that. So looking at this, what we're looking at is not exclusively food, right? Some of them are plants that you don't necessarily think of as being edible, but some of them, most of these are edible, but some of them are like man-made products, right? Like whipped cream. So this is just a really clear way to sort of understand terpenes and how we categorize them. One way that we can categorize them. I think that everyone sort of has an ability to interpret a scent differently. Some people love the smell of patchouli. I don't like the smell of patchouli. I don't love the smell of patchouli. And if you would think that I would, because I normally like warm, spicy, hippie kind of scents. I normally do. I love clove, but I don't love it. But some people do love it. So everyone's interpretation of what they like and don't like might be different, but we can still all agree on the fact that patchouli smells spicy and warm and peppermint smells cooling, etc. So it's just one way to sort of categorize them. I do find that when people start to learn more about terpenes and the terpenes in cannabis, especially, I think that it's easy to sort of link the way that we identify a cannabis strain that we might like based on scent is similar to how you might identify a food that you want to eat based on scent, right? If something smells really good, you might want to eat it.
Yeah, the nose knows. They always say
exactly.
the nose knows.
Right. So it's the same thing with cannabis. So when you're in that dispensary and there's all these jars to choose from, and you're sort of overwhelmed with the cannabinoid content and the 5 different terpenes in there, just smell it. Just ask to smell it, because if it doesn't appeal to you, and it may even smell skunky and like diesel or dirt, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't appeal to you. So they're able to really get into your olfactory and sort of make a connection. Your olfactory part of your brain is pretty powerful. Think of like when you've had that experience of smelling something and not knowing, oh, what is that smell? That reminds me of something, or instantly it reminds you, you're instantly transported to your grandma's house because she always had jasmine by the front door, or she was always baking brownies. So you're instantly transported to grandma's house without even thinking about the connection. Your brain has made that connection. So terpenes can do that for you when you're trying to choose food, obviously, but also when you're trying to choose cannabis. This is a great wheel. I love this one because it is so much more detailed. Like we could talk about this for an hour. But besides the obvious, like pink being floral, and then you seeing lavender and geranium, let's look over kind of to the right side where it says roasted animal, mineral, and earthy. So there's some examples in there that you don't think that you would normally love, like skunk and rotten things, or maybe vinegar or urine, or gamey smells, or things like that, smoky smells. But all of those are still able to sort of fall into categories of things that you do also like the smell of the ocean is a natural scent. So is vinegar. The smell of metal or mineral, like a stainless steel, sort of has a scent to it that falls into the same category as diesel or petroleum. So when you're learning to sort of identify how things smell to you, what the aroma is, you identify with it, then you can really start to connect it to terpenes. I have had the experience many times of smelling a flower or a food or an herb, and it smells like cannabis to me because the compounds, the terpenoid compounds that are found in food are the same ones that are found in cannabis. And because cannabis has such a huge variety of terpenes, you'll really be able to link that to food. Almost always, if I smell roasted garlic, it smells like cannabis to me. So I know, and I love garlic. I eat more garlic than you would ever think humanly possible. But that's definitely that pungent sort of smell like you would have in your thyme or your basil or your oregano, and then also have in probably like a beta-carothylene terpene that's in cannabis. So let's talk about just a few of the more well-known terpenes. But remember, I said there's like over 200 of them that can be found, and growers are really, really, really working hard to try to develop these desirable terpenes and terpene content, raising the level of terpenes in your cannabis. If you are able to find a strain of cannabis and they tell you that it's like 3, 4, 5% terpenoids, that's a pretty significant amount. It should be a really heavily scented flower for you. So what's up first? Alpha pinene. So alpha pinene, as you would expect, is found in pine, obviously, and also in cannabis. Alpha pinene has this ability to sort of create an alert feeling, not in an energetic way, just in a very present way. So you see the difference between when you meditate, you're very present. When you drink a bunch of coffee, you're very alert. So it's a little bit different than it's not a stimulation feeling. There is something called Japanese forest bathing, which is such a beautiful term.
Yes.
Japanese forest bathing is just the practice of spending time in the forest in nature and being surrounded by this, heavy pine scent from the trees there, and the focus and the alertness and the presence sort of feeling that you can have. Alpha pinene is used a lot. People like to rely on that in a strain that they need to stay awake and study and focus, or maybe it helps a little bit with that short-term memory loss we might have with THC. So it really helps to balance that out. It's actually used in a lot of strains where people are using it to treat asthma. So some places have the cannabis inhalers, and those usually are really heavy with the alpha pinene. Linalool. So linalool is really very floral. You'll really can recognize it by the way it smells, like flowers, or maybe even like a patch of woodsy floral, forest floor is what I'm trying to say. The most outside of cannabis, the most popular plant that's abundant in linalool would be lavender. So when I say lavender, most people immediately think of how it makes you feel. It's anti-anxiety. It can be sedating. So the same with a plant that or cannabis plant that's high in linalool. Linalool is found in a lot of your cultivars that have the word purple in them. So like Granddaddy Purple, Purple Ripple, those things.
Yep.
Which I think is a clear association to the lavender plant. What's next? Mercene. Mercene is the most abundant terpene in cannabis. So it is found in more varieties of cannabis than any other terpene. That's not to say that every strain of cannabis has a ton of mercene in it. That's not true, but it is found the most commonly. It is not really found as commonly in other plants. It is very abundant in mango. So you'll hear kind of that old hippie folklore of, hey, eat a mango when you smoke your weed and you're going to be more stoned. I don't know that there's a scientific study on that, but I know that the link between mercene and a mango can possibly intensify sort of the sleepy body high that you might get from a mercene-rich cannabis strain, because mercene is very sleep-inducing. It's very good for pain, so it's analgesic. So that's a really popular combination. Anyone who cannot sleep because of pain, mercene is really a good ally for that.
That's one of my favorites. That's definitely one of my favorites.
Is it?
One that I'm for.
I'm actually going to go to my favorite right now. So I'm not going to do beta-carothylene. I'm going to do that last. But limonene. Limonene is absolutely my favorite, but I am a citrus loving girl. I mean, even down to the citrus flowers like orange blossom and neroli, and anything that smells like, if it smells like lemons and grapefruit, I'm so in. So limonene is a little bit more of an uplifting terpene. It's not to say that it is stimulating, but it definitely has a sort of a combination of sustaining some energy, perhaps, as opposed to zapping your energy. It's not like an energetic like coffee for most people. It's just an alertness, but it's happy. So lemons, just the smell of lemons is a happy smell for some of us. It is so because it's happy and it's uplifting. It's incredibly anxiolytic. It's a really good anti-anxiety terpene. Also antibacterial. So limonene is used in a lot of topical products that are designed to be antibacterial. Limonene is also used as a solvent a lot. So I have had the experience of going into a establishment. It was a bar, and it's been a while. And immediately I thought, someone's smoking weed in the bar, and we're in Texas, so that's brave. And I just knew it. I just knew it to be true. And it smelled like a fantastic variety because it smelled like limonene to me. And later I figured out that they had been using like a goof off product or
Uh,
some type of adhesive remover. And
Goo
those are
Gone.
just, Goo
Yeah,
Gone is one of those.
yeah,
Yeah, they
Goo
had
Gone.
been using Goo Gone, and it's that is just a limonene solvent. And it
Yeah.
smells like, you just stuck your face in an orange. So once you really start to sort of train your nose, you'll make these crazy assumptions, and people will think you're really crazy that you smell garlic and it smells like weed to you. But to me, it's kind of like what people that are love wine, people that really have a nose for the wine that they drink, and they can really pull out the oaks and the vanillas and the smoke and the tobacco and all of that that nose, that you really can develop that with your cannabis, and doing so will benefit you immensely when trying to choose what's best for you.
Yeah.
Last one.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. There was a research study in China. I wrote a blog post about it a few years ago about lemon essential oil and how they did a study on productivity, I should say, in a office building in China. And they actually piped in lemon essential oil and did some studies and testing throughout time and found that when they did that, their productivity levels of their team members increased. So, I
Yeah,
mean, lining, like
yeah,
you exactly what you said, it just improves your mood.
right.
It for attention, energy, things like that. So it is
Yeah,
very, very accurate.
yeah, and I really can make that connection too for myself because um, we talked a little bit about sativa versus indica and how that was really more of an implied uh, reaction or feeling. It's not necessarily a genetic absolute. And people argue with me about this all the time, but I'm telling y'all, it's true. So I can use limonene as an example because I am fortunately I have a pretty low tolerance for THC. I'm a pretty cheap date. That's nice because a little bit will go a long way. But because of that, it absolutely makes me sleepy. Forget the other cannabinoids and the terpenes. Just forget those
Interesting.
for a minute. THC will make me sleepy. Um, eventually. And by eventually, I mean 30, 45 minutes and I'm ready to sleep. If I have limonene in there, I'm not as sleepy. I'm very relaxed and comfortable, but I could still, read a book, watch a movie, engage in conversation. Whereas some people that are either more tolerant of THC or maybe they're using a lower THC cultivar, that limonene could just really keep them awake, just be an incredible stimulant. So you will find in strains that people have labeled, not Mother Nature didn't label them this way, but people have labeled as indica or labeled as sativa. When something is labeled as sativa, it is implying a feeling, right? We all kind of know what they're saying by, oh, it's a sativa. Often those have your more uplifting terpenes in them, like limonene. Whereas
Right.
the opposite might be true with linalool. You might find those to be more present in your indica leaning. So I like to do beta-carothylene last today because it's pretty complex. Beta-carothylene is the only terpene that we know of, not just in cannabis. It exists in other things too, like black pepper. It
Mhm.
has the ability to interact with your cannabinoid 2 receptor. That's the same receptor that the CBD primarily interacts with. So it does behave like a cannabinoid, and in that, what that actually would mean for us is that it can have similar effects as CBD. So for many people, it is anti-anxiety, but for some people, too much of it isn't. And I find CBD to sometimes have that effect for people. But it is incredibly anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antibacterial. It has high antioxidant properties similar to CBD. It also can help reduce pain because anything that's anti-inflammatory can help reduce pain. When you smell cannabis that smells really skunky, I've had the experience as well of driving by a dead skunk on the road and just being certain that instead it was someone in the car next to me smoking. I mean, it's such a clear association. That's typically actually I'm such a nerd that I actually looked up a couple of studies on what are the terpenes in skunk smell.
Right.
And I'm here to tell you it's a lot of Mercene.
Are you serious?
I don't know, but I'm glad that wasn't my job to have to collect the scent of the skunk and break it down, but somebody did that for us, and there's a lot of Mercene. So when someone says that it's a strain of skunky, that it legitimately is. There's a connection. But beta-carothylene, this is what I think is really helps you remember beta-carothylene. It is the terpene that they use to train drug dogs. So it's a heavily scented, when it's one of our terpenes that have a heavier, more noticeable scent. If I put salt on something, you can't smell it, but if I put black pepper on something, you can smell it. I mean, black pepper it doesn't take much for you to smell that, and it's loaded with beta-carothylene. So they use beta-carothylene terpenoids to train drug dogs on, because obviously drug dogs nobody can smell cannabinoids, but they use that to train them. Isn't that cool?
That is really interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, I think that's super cool.
Wow.
So that's just 5. I mean, we could do that 195 more times and probably there'll be more terpenoids discovered, in between. But it really, really, really is where the magic is. It really is. So people that are creating cannabis products, so beyond flower, they're using the flower to create other products. They really, most good product developers are doing this, but they really should be working to preserve the terpene content in that processing and in that product development, because that is where the magic is. That's what will set one product apart from another product, or one plant from another plant apart, and certainly set apart the experience that you're going to have from just using cannabinoids. So it's interesting to me when you see these products that say, oh, this brownie is, and I'm talking about like commercial retail products, and they say this brownie is, it's an indica brownie. Well, I kind of want to know what makes it an indica now, because I don't sense any terpenes in here, and what kind of process did they go through to protect and use those terpenes? Did they keep them there? Because if they did keep them there, then I'm okay with them saying that it's implied that it's an indica. But most of the time, if it starts out as one plant, through the processing, a lot of times they lose those terpenes and really lose the magic.
Yeah, they're very volatile. Same with essential, and some just with essential oils. More citrus are more volatile than other essential oils. So citrus essential oils degrade so much easier. So same thing, similar.
Right. So you think of essential oils, and their sort of vulnerability is, if I had some peppermint essential oil, which is a combination of terpenes that make up the smell of peppermint. Peppermint, all your plants are not just one terpene, but that's why some mints smell different than other mints, right? Wintergreen, spearmint, peppermint, and then even on into like lemon balm and other mint families. They have such different scents because they have a different combination of cannabinoids. But anyway, if I were to take one drop of peppermint essential oil, put it on my hand, and do this, and you come into the room. When you come into the room, it's only a minute or two before 10 feet away from me, you smell it.
Yep.
That's how volatile it is. And an hour later, we don't smell it at all. It's gone. It's gone. So that's what's good and bad about them. That's how they cross the blood-brain barrier. That's how we really can use them. That's how we can get cannabinoids, we can get terpene effects just by smelling something. But it's really difficult to keep those in a product, especially if they're combusting it with really high heat or high heat processing method.
Interesting. So, well, that's amazing information, Amanda. You are always a wealth of, such amazing, source of knowledge, and we just really appreciate having you with
I
us.
love being here.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love being here.
Really excited. I know we made sure that everyone knew for next week, or not next week, 2 weeks from now, we'll be discussing doing a deep dive into terpenes that are beneficial for those with anxiety issues. So, and also ones to stay away from if you have anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So we will definitely fill everybody in with that. And that date is February the, let me look here really quickly.
Yeah, you don't have to look, because I'll guess.
February 10th will be the next at 7. So we'll be back then. But thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. Amanda, I really appreciate you being here. And we will see everyone next time on Cannabis Live.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.